Hello everybody and welcome to the latest installment of New Chapter New Zealand, our travel vlog where we're going to tell you everything that we can about our move from the United States of America to New Zealand. And today I kind of wanted to deal with a little bit of a question that I get asked occasionally and that I think about a lot of times. It's, are you crazy? Which it remains to be seen, but it's a long plane ride. It's a completely different culture. It's a long way from family, and there's a whole lot of what-ifs that go into actually making the move. And so we kind of dealt with it a little bit at the end of our last video when we said that we felt called to go to New Zealand, but that's such a term that's overused and not really well understood, so I wanted to sit down and break it down a little bit in our specific case and just try to understand it a little bit more and explain it a little bit more to you guys. So the first thing I did was sit down and think of a biblical example or a biblical story of somebody being called to go do something. And the first story that came to my mind is Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch. And so it's in Acts chapter 8 if you want to read that. It's a great little story. Should take you less than 5 minutes. But the root of the story comes when Philip is preaching in Samaria, and he is faced with an angel of the Lord. The Bible says an angel of the Lord came down and spoke to Philip and told him to go to Gaza. Now, Samaria is a mixture of Jewish and Gentile culture, but Gaza would have been a completely Gentile culture, something that was completely foreign to him, something that wouldn't have necessarily made sense. But the Bible tells us that Philip got up and just went. And the story kind of continues to where he meets an Ethiopian eunuch on the road. If you don't want to know what a eunuch is, I'll let you Google it later. But the eunuch is reading the scriptures aloud, and he's having a really hard time understanding what they mean. It's in the passage he's reading is somewhere in Isaiah. And Philip walks up to him and helps him to kind of understand and interpret the scriptures. Along their travels, just a little bit farther, the Ethiopian eunuch says, well, what's keeping me from being baptized right now? And that's the story of how Philip from Samaria gets called and goes to Gaza to baptize an Ethiopian eunuch. It's an amazing story, and I really wish that I had an angel of the Lord coming down into my living room and telling me that, Garrett, I want you to go. Or I kind of wish that I had a Bible chapter dedicated to the book of Garrett Hoyer that told me exactly where I needed to go. But unfortunately, it hasn't happened. So if I haven't had somebody directly speaking to me, and neither has Alana, then how do we know what we're called to then? What are we actually called to do? And if you look in the Bible, there's only a couple blanket commandments that Jesus gives us to actually go and put into motion. And the first couple come from Matthew chapter 22, when Jesus is being cornered by some of the authorities of the day, and they ask him what the greatest commandment is. And it was meant to be a trap, but Jesus responds by saying the first greatest commandment is that you love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. And then he follows that up with the second, and he says, love your neighbor as yourself. So those are the first two of those blanket commandments that apply to everyone. And the third one is something that we take from Matthew chapter 28. It is known as the Great Commission. And it essentially says, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of Jesus Christ. And disciples is a fancy Christianese word for somebody else who loves God and loves other people. So we break that down, and we're going to get kind of a little bit of a mission statement, if you will, of love God, love others, and make disciples. But this is something that can be done literally anywhere. So why New Zealand? Why not stay in Fort Myers, or why not move somewhere domestic but maybe a little farther away? Why do we have to go all the way across the world? And no, it's not just because it's pretty, or that we're trying to escape something, or that we're trying to run away from something. It's deeper than that. It's a much deeper and more difficult to explain reason. At this point, if you haven't already watched it, I'm going to link a Francis Chan video down in the description, right down there if you click. You need to watch it to kind of explain what I'm going to say here, so I'll go ahead and wait. Go ahead and, no, seriously. Right now, go ahead and pause it and watch. But come back. Make sure you come back. I'll be right here waiting. Okay. Hi. That looked weird if you didn't actually do what I asked you to do. The video, for those of you who didn't go and watch it, or just to kind of surmise it for you, is that he comes out on stage with this really, really long rope. And at the very end of it, he has just a little piece of red tape on there. And he says, imagine that this rope is a timeline of your life, and that the little red piece represents your life here on earth. In most people's lives, they focus so hard on making the end of that little piece of red tape enjoyable that they forget completely about the rest of the rope. And it can be boiled down into being temporally minded, or thinking about what you have right here and right now on earth, or being eternally minded and thinking about what the weight of your actions here on earth mean either in your eternity or in somebody else's eternity, which has infinitely more weight. And while there really are no black and white answers of where I am supposed to be or what I am supposed to do, in a lot of ways in my own experiences, I've seen that God has used your wiring, your individual loves, and your talents to make you effective in a certain area. And we see that in scriptures too. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 12, where Paul talks about people being like different body parts. You know, one person's like an ear so that the body has hearing, or one person is an eye so that it can see. But when the eye starts trying to hear, bad things happen. So you have to kind of fit into your own talents and your own abilities. And we firmly believe that our love for this people and for this culture that we have fostered over several trips there now is an advantage to us. We love that culture and that people so much, and we have such a dedication to making sure people fit into that mission statement of loving God and loving others and making disciples, that we truly feel like our presence there can make a difference. And it might not be some grand scheme, or, I might not be the next Billy Graham. I probably won't. It's that faithfulness and that willingness to step out of your comfort zone that makes a really big difference. And to kind of illustrate that, I want to tell you a story that is not my own. I can't remember who told it, otherwise I'd cite them, but it was told to me at a youth gathering in, I think it was middle school. And it really resonated with me. So the story is that a guy is getting on an airplane, and he's a preacher, and he's going from one event to the next one, and he's got to get his sermon ready for the next one, his message for the next event that he's going to, but he feels this calling and this urge to make disciples, or in his words, he said, to spread the gospel, to tell one person about the gospel that day. And so he gets on the plane still thinking about this mission, and he sits in his seat in the back of the plane and just kind of waits for people to show up. Doesn't really know how it's all going to work out yet, but faithful that God's going to give him an opportunity. And so an elderly lady, walks all the way back to the plane and sits down next to him. And he starts making conversation with her, learning a little bit more about her story, where she's from, where she's going, and, all of the regular travel banter. So he takes out his Bible to work on his sermon for his next location. And he realizes that he doesn't have a pen to write with. And so he taps the lady on the shoulder and asks her to borrow her pen. And she agrees and starts digging in her purse and pulls out a little pen for him to use. So he starts taking notes and starts working on this sermon for the next location. And she looks over and sees him writing in his Bible. And the next thing he knows, she snatches the pen out of his hand. And she says, "If you're going to be writing in that garbage, I don't want you using my pen." He said, "The thing that you just called garbage is my only hope. It's my only peace. It's the only thing that keeps me going in a day. Because the truth that's in this book is more comforting than anything else in the world. It helps me realize that even though I'm a mess up and that almost everything I do goes wrong, I've got somebody out there who cares for me more than anything else in the world. That no matter what happens to me, I know his mission is more important than anything else. That was the beginning of a 5-hour flight, he said. And he said that it was a really quiet 4.5 hours. So as the plane's coming in for a landing, he is thinking really hard. He wants to say something, but before he can even muster up the courage, she gets up and walks off the plane. And he's in the back, so he's just waiting for people to deplane, and he's thinking about where he messed up, what went wrong. And he wishes that he could have said something different, that he could have changed her mind, but she didn't. He felt like a failure. And as he's sitting there thinking these things, a man in the seat in front of him stands up, and he says, "I just flew all the way out here to bury my 16-year-old daughter, who just got in a car crash and died. And if that book does half the things you say it does, I could use some of that." And right there, he tore his Bible in half and gave the man the New Testament version and said, "Start there, that's what I have to give you." The point of that whole story is that it might not be some grand scheme, or it might not even be what you planned it to be, but your willingness and your heart to make a difference often will make a difference even if you don't see the result of it. A quote that a friend of mine told me is, "Never be afraid to plant seeds that you will never see grow to give shade." So all of that to really come back to the question of why New Zealand then. We believe that our love for this people and for the culture puts us in a position to really make a difference for somebody there. We don't know who it is, we don't know how it will be, but we want to be a part of what God is doing there. And it's not going to be easy. More often than not, I believe it's probably going to end in something that's difficult for us to go through, and it's going to test us in a lot of ways that we can't even think about now. But, like Francis Chan was saying, we want to be so focused on that finish line that all of the rest of this stuff doesn't make a difference for us. What does this mean for you then? I don't want it to be all about me. I want this core message to be something that you can think about for yourself too. And so what I can say is that be eternally minded. Don't be so focused on your life that you miss your opportunities to make a difference in somebody else's. And don't be so focused on getting to the end or to the next step that you forget about everything that's still to come. The other thing is be willing to step out of your comfort zone. Sometimes it's not going to be an easy thing that makes the most difference. More often than not, it's going to be the hard thing. And for those of you who think that all my Christian mumbo-jumbo is just a load of hooey, it doesn't matter. The same thing applies to you. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone to try to make a difference in somebody else's life. Because if more people do that, we're going to have less of the hardship that we have now. So I realize that was probably way deeper than you ever really wanted to get in this video, and you really didn't understand what you were getting into when you clicked on it. But I want to thank you for watching anyway. And I hope that some of it resonates with you and maybe can galvanize you to do something maybe a little bit drastic or a little bit fun in your own life. And I wanted to go ahead and ask you a couple favors. I want you to like this video, and I also want you to share it with all of your friends and family if you can, because that helps us get the word out and connect with a lot of you, and it'll make this whole thing a lot more interesting and a lot more fun. Also, we want you to like our Facebook page because there'll be a lot of interesting content coming out on there, including pictures from New Zealand and maybe a couple other little things along the way. We'll see. The link to our Facebook page will be in the description below. Also, let's make this a little bit interesting and have some discussion down in the comments. What is something that you think your talents could drive you to do? Also, please comment on some of the other people's comments below and encourage them to achieve their mission in however they can. Finally, as always, please keep us in prayer as we go through this process. It means the world to us, and it's the biggest thing that you could possibly do for us right now. So thank you for everything, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. If you're enjoying the New Chapter New Zealand community, please make sure to share it with your friends and family. Please also don't forget to check out the description for more ways to keep up with the latest from NCNZ. See you next time.